to me, the theme was communication, but ultimately, like, the deeper theme is like being human. How are we being human? Because being human inevitably means interacting with other people, which is, of course, is communication. So communication is about being a human being, and ultimately, how can I be a better version of myself? What's often missing, if you like, as engaging, communicating with other people, what's our responsibility in that? And part of that, I think, is how do I want to be listened to here? And all of that creates an emotional tone, like a mood, if you like, in a household or in a part of a business or a team. If the communication keeps on being the same, the mood stays the same and perpetuates the communication.
What does it mean to be human? Relationships are at the heart of our interaction, and communication is one of the key and fundamental aspects of relating to each other. It's one of the determining factors of the quality of our lives. I've invited Alan Sieler, who's the director and the head of the Ontological Coaching Institute, to have a chat. He has a long-standing background in the science behind what makes humans human beings. And we're starting to have a chat about conversations and communication, where we go wrong, what we can practically do about it. And we're cracking that egg open just as a starter. Come and have a listen to this. Some of it's a bit deep, but there's some really good takeaways in it, and definitely worth listening to. Thanks for taking the time. I think there's so much value through our audience that you can add, and so many things to unpack with you. What we thought we'd talk about today was communication and miscommunication. Can I start with, who is Alan Sieler? Because not nobody, some people will know you, others may not. And it'd be great to know, well, who are you?
Yeah.
Who's Alan?
Who am I today? Good question. Yeah. No, well, partly how I identify myself is I specialise in the field of ontological coaching. So ontological being a bit of a mouthful, but ontology, the study of being or the nature of existence, and it's quite I think, an insightful way of looking at how are we living and what's the quality of our lives, be it at work or at home, community life, and based on really solid thinking of some quite innovative thinkers in the 20th century. But outside of business, of course, I've got family life, have a partner, I've got son, 4 grandkids who were living in Germany for 8 years and have been back in Australia for a year, so that's great. I spend a lot of time with them, and time with my partner, and my other part of my family live overseas in the US, so I sort of have regular contact with them. And I enjoy trying to keep active, just taking care of my body and my health, and a bit of running and regular exercise. And because I think if you haven't got your health and energy, you haven't got much going for you. So to me, part of enjoyment of life is like, is have you got the health and energy to allow you to do what you want to do?
Yeah, fantastic. And I'll add that I had the privilege of studying under you for a couple of years. This might go back almost a decade potentially.
Yeah, it would be now, yeah.
It was a long time ago. And all of that learning sits with me today and has helped me on the journey. I thought I'd put that on the table. I invited you specifically because you're quite humble. I think your introduction doesn't do your base of knowledge and experience any justice, so I thought I'd put that on the table as well.
Thank you.
But that'll probably be revealed during the conversation. How are you seeing people's behaviour today, given what's going on in the world? And are you hearing and seeing people behave differently to what they were a year ago?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. The way I approach responding to that question is through an aspect of the emotional world that all humans live in, that goes by the name of moods. And moods are sort of long-term emotional ways of being. And many moods are actually quite they're quite hidden. It's not easy to detect, but to answer your question directly, what I observe is certain moods becoming more prominent in the world today. One that goes by the label of resentment. An example of that would be road rage, which we've seen around for a few years, but people seemingly increasingly dissatisfied and looking for where to apportion the blame, not feeling taken care of. So we can put a whole host of reasons, I think, for that. Standard of living going backwards and so on. And I think another mood that couples with that is, the mood of anxiety, like constantly fearful, not knowing what's going to happen and whether we'll be able to deal with what happens. And those two combined can significantly influence behavior. So with resentment, people might be more prone to aggressive behavior, which can include sort of looking to apportion blame, for their own circumstances of life. And anxiety, people are constantly focused on, if you like, protecting themselves. So, we talked earlier about discretionary spending. Well, a way of protecting yourself is to sort of, spend less so you've got that money there in case something, worse happens. And I think people are, in those moods, people are often searching for explanations, but no one seems to have a really good explanation about how come the world seems to have developed the way it is at the moment. And, coupled with that, we've got sort of rapid technological change in which some people can feel displaced from. For others, it's a real exciting world. That's I think I'd look at sort of the moods, because the power of moods is they always shape our perceptions and behaviors. So we have a three-letter expression for moods, that they're predispositions for action. So perception is an action because it's the nervous system in action. And then our behavior, how we communicate, what we say, what we don't say, our physical actions, the way we relate to people, they all come from the moods that we find ourselves in. But often those moods are completely out of awareness for people.
So one of the key things I learned in my study with you is in communicating with other people, some of the outcome is dependent on how we communicate. So if I'm coming to you and say, Alan, I want to do this deal with you. If I'm not mindful of the mood I'm in, what comes out of my mouth can be helpful or unhelpful. Or perhaps it predispositions me to get a poor outcome because I wasn't aware of my mood and how I was positioning my interaction with you.
Yes, yeah. And there's another part of that as well, not that you could know for sure, but anticipating what could be my mood. Are there things that's important for you to say to more or less prepare me for you proposing a deal to me? Do I seem to be in a receptive space to listen to you? And if you assess that I'm not available to listen to you, I may not be, then what's important to do to sort of prepare the ground, without being sneaky or manipulative about it.
So if we unpack a bit further and talk about what practical steps we could take on both sides of the fence to prepare ourselves for a conversation, I think a starting point for me would be before I engage. Well, I actually do this every morning for the whole day. How am I feeling today? Because that gives me an orientation to be aware of, all right, what's happening with me first.
Yeah.
Before I start interacting, even in email, because it's still a communication.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And how I'm feeling does determine how I position myself in an email, how I respond to you, and of course, what's going to come back the other way. So, but it's the same for every conversation, potentially, isn't it? We could say to ourselves, well, how am I feeling right now? What mood am I observing in myself before I engage with you? What do you think?
I agree. I think it's, I think part of the kind of standard, let's say, understanding of communication is you just say something.
That's the default, isn't it?
Or you write something, I mean, we've probably all had that experience. If you get an email and you read it, and you're incensed and there's flames coming out of your nostrils, and if you reply straight away, it'll be a disaster. So sometimes, something in my head's been screaming, put it in the drafts folder, come back to it later, And I'll come back to it later, and it's a completely different email because I'm in a whole different emotional space, and I can give it a more considered response rather than a knee-jerk reaction. So yeah, I think what's often missing, if you like, as engaging, communicating with other people, what's our responsibility in that? And part of that, I think, is how do I want to be listened to here? And so that I think is a very important part of the preparation, because ultimately for me, communication, I think we live in an old-fashioned view of communication that comes out of the world of engineering. I think it might have been electronical engineering, where there's a sender and there's a receiver, and in the middle there might be some interference that gets called noise. And what the receiver does is, decode the message. And that's a sort of mechanical view of humans. And we are not machines. We're biological entities. So communication is not sending a message. Communication, for me, is shared understanding. Nothing's been communicated unless the person I'm speaking with or writing to actually has the same understanding as I would like them to have. And this opens up a very interesting area because language is involved, and using language skillfully is such a crucial part of communication. And one of the things that's come out of the work of people in biology and philosophy is to see that language is fundamentally about orienting us to the world in a particular way. So if I say, could you please get me a cup of coffee with 1 sugar? I just have it black, weak black, half the cup with water, half with coffee, just a Levels teaspoonful of sugar. Stir it 5 times anti-clockwise, please. And you might go, oh, you don't need to be so pedantic, Alan. But when I taste that coffee, I want it to be like, oh, that's great. Thanks, Hanif. And often we just skate over, a lot of the specifics that are important. But if I'm communicating with someone, part of shared understanding is we are oriented to some part of the world in the same way. And my responsibility is to help orient you to the world of a cup of coffee that Alan likes to have.
Well, it puts you in a better mood, makes you more receptive, and makes you, I imagine, feel more taken care of in the moment.
Yeah. I mean, if we were doing that, I would do it in a joking way because, it's being a bit picky. But I'd say, look, excuse me for being a bit pedantic, but I like it this way, you know. So we could sort of have a bit of fun, a bit of joke about it. But ultimately, you would know what I wanted. And so that would help our interaction. I go, oh, that's great. Thanks, Hanif. Really enjoyed that.
Yeah, and I would play with that too, because I like to have fun with people. Just it opens people up. So I say, yep, just as ordered, Alan, but I didn't stir it 6 times, even though I was tempted to.
Yes, that's right.
You know, and then the whole thing becomes playful.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a whole different mood. I mean, another general mood that's really easy to get caught in, I just call a mood of seriosity, where everything's really heavy, big deal, and there's no room for what we could call respectful lightness and playfulness. So underneath, we're serious about what we want to get done, what we want to accomplish, but the manner in which we go about doing that doesn't have to be like big deal serious. And so, I mean, you know, a cup of coffee is a seemingly trivial example, but, you know, I could be really serious about it because, you know, I like my coffee a certain way and I want to be satisfied. And if I'm not satisfied, I'm not a happy chappy. And you might be going, all right, I better do the right thing by Alan, you know. But if we do it in a playful manner, then it's a whole different mood.
Yeah, definitely. So how do we go in that interaction if we get to a point where we become aware of ourselves first and what we determine might be a good way to go about setting up the conversation? How do I make an assessment of your mood to say, well, how do I assess whether Alan's ready to listen?
Yeah. Yeah, and like we are in a way where we're second guessing, but the value of that is it takes us out of our own stuff. And we factor in, okay, I mean, you know, if we use a sort of a physical analogy, is there a receptive landing strip for my idea, my thought? Or will it be dismissed straight away? So, I mean, you know, many people have got experiences with kids and teenage kids. So, you know, some of my teenage kids are grandsons. And that's an interesting world of communicating with males at that age. And,
Yes, it is.
and what I've learned is the importance of timing. So that the Greeks have a word, I think it's pronounced as kairos. I think in English a lot of would say it's kairos, which is timing. And so that blends really nicely with an expression that the right conversation in the wrong mood is the wrong conversation. So, you know, I'm interested in how my grandsons are going at school, but school's a bit of a no-go zone, you know, like, oh, it's okay, it's good, you know. So it's a matter of just what's the right time. My partner likes to get in the car with them, right? Because now they're trapped. And she finds they're much more receptive. But you know, part of what I'm aware of is I don't want these kids to feel like I'm interrogating them. Okay? You know, so it's to me my like ask 2 questions and get out of there because that's enough for them. You know, and it's about ultimately about them feeling respected.
I'm going to jump back. I've done this a little backwards, and I don't think it matters that much in the scheme of things. What do you observe doesn't work or goes wrong with the way we generally communicate?
My guess would be that a lot of people are caught up in the view that communication is just about saying something or writing something. And, you know, as the world's become more digital, a lot of that stuff's become abbreviated. And, you know, people can have a shared understanding, of course, of different emojis and different expressions. But, you know, communication to me sits inside a bigger context, which is relationships. So how are we relating with each other, I think is probably a sort of more important question. Are we doing so in a way that's respectful of each other? Or am I simply taking for granted that because I tell you something, you'll automatically understand it? And if you don't understand it, then there's something wrong with you. And, you know, when we fall into that mode, well, then we're completely absolving ourselves of any responsibility. And I think that's, you know, that's where a big issue lies and where relationships start to break down.
So why is it we communicate? For the sake of what?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I think like other mammals or insects as well, you know, we're social beings. We function in the world together, not as separate entities going about life. We are, to use a kind of bit of a fancy expression, inextricably interdependent. And you might think, oh, well, I don't see anyone. I mightn't see anyone today. But if you're reading a book, then there's interaction with the author there. If you're online, you know, you're interacting with the website or whatever, writing an email. So, and it's, you know, it's through that interaction, you know, that we get things done. But, you know, one of the interesting things for me, communication, I've learnt from the field of biology, what's called biology of cognition, is that what we have at a biological level is that some person, what's called makes an utterance. And the utterance could be they write something or they speak something. Okay. They say, we'll talk about saying, they say that, okay, and then there's a person within their field of awareness, if you like, and that person makes their sense of what is said. But the only way that person can make sense of what is said is from what's already within them. To put it in another way, the sense we make of other people is the meaning we already have about life. So, in a way, each person who's in the position of the listener is doing their translation of what did those words mean? What did those gestures mean? And that becomes their reality. And so it's referred to as an encounter.
I have many encounters with my partner of that nature. I think that for me, they are, for me personally, the best examples that I can point to, because she will say things from her way of being, and some of them are utterances. And I can see it in myself. I'll automatically and very quickly interpret it and go, this is what she means.
Yes, yeah.
And as only 2 weeks ago, there's an example in my mind where even when that came into my mind, there's a conflict inside of me. Because my body was saying, yeah, that's what she's talking about. I don't agree with that. But another part of me knew, no, that's not right.
Yeah.
I think she's talking about something else from her own perspective, and it might be aimed at me, but I don't think she means to aim it at me.
No.
It's just coming out. But my interpretation is totally off the mark.
Yeah, yeah.
So she means something different. And even the words she used aren't describing where that's coming from.
No. And, you know, one of the traps we can fall into when someone says something to us, if we look at the other side, like when we're in the role of the listener, we might automatically assume, you know, what they're really on about, What's their real intention here? And of course, we're making a guess about that. But it's so easy for us to live as though, well, that's what's really happening. And so, we have a person with two people living in very different worlds of perception, and operating out of that, and those perceptions being their reality. And then that's when we get into pointing the finger and blaming. No, I know what you really meant. No, you said it.
Yeah, but that's what you said, Alan.
That's what, sorry?
I've said that before, but that's what you said. You said these words, and those words mean this.
Yeah, and I know what that means. Yeah. So, one of the traps of communication is living in the world of assumptions and treating them as though they're the truth. And that's when we really get into argy-bargy with each other, in a sense, being prepared to defend territory and go to war, not necessarily, hopefully, physically, but, making the other person wrong, discrediting them, and justifying ourselves.
Yeah, it's a massive trap. And
yeah.
I think it spans, it's a human being thing, I think, really, isn't it? Because it doesn't matter what domain, whether it's family or business.
Yeah.
We bring ourselves with us, so it's going to be the same.
Exactly. Yeah. And all of that creates an emotional tone, like a mood, if you like, in a household or in a part of a business or a team. And if the communication keeps on being the same, the mood stays the same and perpetuates the communication.
And I see that a lot I see that in family situations, but I certainly see it a lot in business.
Yeah.
I've walked into businesses and you feel the mood.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And this, like in a kind of business, political world, whatever, wherever we've got people in positions of leadership, I mean, fundamentally, they get their job as leaders through the way they communicate. And their responsibility, and again, I don't think this is sort of a sufficiently emphasised enough in leadership. Their responsibility is to be as good a quality communicators as they can be, which just doesn't include saying the appropriate words. It means being prepared to listen and what's called listen in advance, anticipate, what are the thoughts, what are the feelings I could be speaking to here? And how do I say what I want to say without compromising what I want to say, but making sure that it gives what I want to say a good chance to get some level of reception that could be the basis for further discussion. And that's a fundamental issue of productivity. Often I don't think it's emphasised enough in business that, I don't know what sort of studies have been done, if there's been any, but businesses is about people cooperating to get things done, coordinating action. That can only happen through conversations, discussions, communication. And so it comes back to, well, how well do things get done? Do they get done on time, satisfactory standard? Are we providing the service and the products in a timely manner to our customers? Are we taking care of our customers? Are we listening to them? It's all bound up in the world of communication.
Yeah, and are we pulling in the same direction?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. If we're talking about productivity in business, there's so much to unpack here, really. Aside from you even if you were to make the assertion, I've got the right people, I've experienced not communicating clearly and well enough to the right people and still not getting the result that I wanted.
Yeah. I mean, it never ceases to amaze me the brilliant specialised knowledge that so many people have. And if you think of a business or a government organisation, It requires people with different specialities, different expertise, to be able to, perform in roles to get things done, so that they contribute to meeting, business objectives. But they can't operate as isolated subjects. Inevitably, they've got to interact with people. And what I think hasn't been emphasised is that being successful in business is the art of communication. Being successful in your role is being, a successful communicator. But it's never been emphasised. Most of the emphasis that people get is on sort of what we might call kind of technical or subject matter expertise, and they get promoted on the basis of that. But as people go further, get to more senior levels, the more their specialty recedes into the background and the more the quality of their interaction with others comes to the fore, in terms of them being successfully influential.
Wow. There's so much I want to add to that little snippet of conversation. And leadership comes to mind. I think leadership's been turned into an industry.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
And the real value of leadership and the essence of it, I reckon, has been lost. Because it isn't something that's particularly, I don't think it's, I wouldn't call it difficult. And I don't think everybody, despite what I'm hearing, is predispositioned to be a leader. I don't know that's true, and I don't know that it suits everyone either.
No, that's a good point. Yeah. I remember coaching a guy years ago who the issue he wanted to be coached on is whether he should actually, he'd been encouraged to apply for a more senior role, and something inside him was going, I don't know. And, when we unpacked what he was experiencing, he really liked the life he had. Family life, work life, the hours he was working, and he knew he'd have to have more responsibilities, work longer. And he said, I don't want to do that. His concern was if he turned down the opportunity, he'd never get offered another opportunity, and he might be sort of sidelined, which is, it was. But in the end, I think he decided not to, and he thought, no, well, if they don't like me here, I'll find somewhere that's a suitable work environment for me that will allow me to have the lifestyle I want, and enjoy my work. So, why I mention that, of course, as part of communication is the communication we have with ourselves, which we're doing all the time, constantly making judgments about ourselves. And some of these can be well in the background and out of awareness, where we might have unfortunate judgments that somehow we're deficient in some way, and we've somehow got to compensate for that in life. So as I say to people sometimes, one of our challenges in life at times is how do we become our own best friend? Be prepared to critique yourself, like sit back, reflect, make a judgment. I definitely could have done that better, but not beat yourself up and sort of characterize yourself as not a worthwhile person. I think is part of the challenge of communication, because the relationship we have with ourselves will influence, I think, the way that we go about relating with others. And,
definitely.
And often leaders, I think, are sort of stuck in playing a role that looks good and really not being true to themselves.
It would be really interesting to do an exercise to pull apart, 100 different leaders or people in leadership roles and see where that sits.
Yeah. Well, a couple of interesting snippets there. I always like it when you hear people say, who stands out in your working life, or even with say through school, who stands out as someone you remember favourably? And the common theme seemed to be that whether it's a teacher or a previous manager, that the person felt really respected by them, and that they were supported to learn, and sure, they make mistakes, but they weren't castigated for it. They weren't heavily criticised. The person saw it as an opportunity for them to learn. And then the other little snippet I remember reading years ago, I think this might have been sort of a Harvard business study, where they looked at successful leaders who were not the sort of the high flying, celebrity types, that books were written about. But they looked at leaders in different businesses where the businesses were really successful and the leaders were very little known. And the conclusion they came to is there were two aspects about these leaders that made a huge difference to their success. One was their humility. They didn't go blowing their trumpet. They were just more focused on, how could I do my job right? How could I take care of my people to try and maximize their enjoyment? And that will help them, in their work performance. And the other one was determination. They didn't give up easily. And when setbacks happened, they weren't thrown off balance. They didn't blame people. They just regathered and took the experience as learning. I thought, it doesn't sound much, but if this is what came out of quite an extensive study of leaders and what makes people effective leaders, to me it's a little gem, because what I took from the study, like my own interpretation was, it sounded like these people genuinely cared for and respected other people. And in turn, it sounds like they were probably respected as well.
Can I add to that story? In my own experience and observations, and I deal with business people every day of the week, that holds true. And the better quality leaders do respect other people. They foster an environment where there's accountability.
Yep.
So we agree we're going to deliver a result, and if we don't, we'll have a discussion about it. And they don't blame, and they do respect. And fostering that environment brings the results, rather than what I see in a lot of corporates. They go, what result do we want? How are we going to drive it? And I think they miss a lot. They get short-term gains, but eventually your productivity is going to drop off and you lose a lot of corporate knowledge when people leave because they're not listened to.
Yep. Yeah.
They're not respected. And I do question whether there actually is leadership, or are you just a bunch of people at the top driving a result? And I think there's a difference.
Really good question. Yeah. It seems to me that there's far too many workplaces that seem to be places of suffering for far too many people. They really don't enjoy it. And I think, the research is showing this. The whole thing about people feeling insufficiently engaged in work. And it's not solely a leader's responsibility, but it is a leadership issue. And it's about sort of, how do I connect with my people to encourage them to be on board with the direction we want to go in the organisation. But rather than just sort of issue an edict and say, this is where we're going to do it, well, let's come and talk to people, listen to them, factor their perspectives in, with what we want to create.
Yeah, I think you can bring, I don't even want to use the term, but I will bring them along for the journey.
Yeah.
Is to say, and I do with this with my people, and I do say to them, your job better than I know it. There are definitely things that you can bring to the table that I probably don't even understand or think about.
Yeah.
So let me share with you where I want to take the business and why. and tell me where you think we should be doing better or can change to get there, and then let's debate it.
Yeah.
We'll argue the crap out of it and agree and disagree with me. That's where the value is.
Yeah. And, you know, because that's the word inclusive, isn't it? You're including them rather than sort of saying something to them. It's more emotion, more a notion of, well, we're in this together.
And I'm genuine about it, Alan. It's not a tick box.
No, it's not. It's not being cleverly manipulative and wanting to fool people. It's genuinely wanting to listen to them, because ultimately, in the long run, if they're not on board, they're not going to cooperate. So they'll either leave or find ways to just look like they're doing okay, but they're not really on board.
Mm.
Yeah.
And importantly, because I'm responsible for getting a company outcome, if there are things that they know that make us more productive or give us a better delivery to our clients, why wouldn't I want that included in how we operate?
Yeah. I was a school teacher for many years with teenage kids, secondary school, and they were probably the best teachers I had in the classroom.
Why is that?
I always thought that what mattered in the classroom was the relationship you had with the kids, regardless of what you're teaching. You know, so that when they came into the classroom, they'd be coming into a space where they felt respected. You know, there was a sort of a safety there for them. And when they would genuinely speak their mind, you know, sometimes I'd say, how's this going? Is this working for you? No, this is crap, sir. You know, I say, well, what's another way you think we could be doing it? And they had some brilliant ideas. And that made teaching so much more enjoyable for me. It wasn't about me delivering a curriculum, you know, one-way traffic of me teaching. To me, it was like you know, it's a loop. You know, how do we learn together here? And to me, it's the same. I mean, a teacher's a leader. It's the same in, you know, we talk about leadership in organisations. You know, are we in a genuine communication loop with each other? Where I'm factoring in how you might be perceiving situations before I speak to you, and when you respond to what I say, that I'm genuinely listening, because there might be some learning there.
So if I were to summarise maybe one little nugget, we could ask ourselves, what am I communicating, rather than what am I saying?
Yes. I would add sort of what and how. Yeah. How am I going about doing this? Am I doing it in a way that honours other people, and I don't compromise what it is I want to convey to people? Yeah. But ultimately, you know, communication's tied to cooperation. I mean, life's pretty crappy, you know, if we don't feel we've got good vibes happening and good cooperation between people, whatever part of life it is. And so communication and cooperation, I mean, they go hand in glove.
Yeah, you're right. And that increases the quality of your relationships.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think everybody could relate to that. So I think maybe if we anchor on that just for one moment, if you don't mind.
Sure, yeah.
Communication and the cooperation, what are we not doing well?
I think the key thing is we actually don't listen to each other. Often when someone's speaking, what we're listening to is what's already within us. So we're not, you know, if I come back to my grandsons, one stage last year, one of them was, he shared with me, he'd gone online and he'd done a little mental health test, and he rated very highly, and it said really concerned, and I was really honoured that he shared it with me. And I thought, he doesn't want me to coach him, right? He just wants me to be his grandpa, for Christ's sake. Excuse the language. So I thought, I was challenged because automatically I'd go into coaching mode, right? But I thought, no. How can I be his grandpa here? So he's going to feel like he's not going to be analysed or interrogated or anything like that. And we ended up it was a brief conversation. I would like to have talked for longer with him, but his other brother was there and he was overhearing, and so we're a bit limited. But the fact that he opened up and we had the conversation, and then a couple of times later on, I just casually checked in with him about a couple of things he'd shared. And he responded a little bit, and I thought, okay, stop, don't overdo it. So to me, I was trying to judge what's his receptiveness and what will be respectful for him in terms of my inquiry.
So how did you respond as a grandpa rather than a coach?
Yeah, well, the coach thing's in the background, but I was sort of trying to use just everyday words and questions. I can't remember the details, but I was more focused on how can I help him stay in conversation about this, so that maybe he could sort of get some new learning for himself from the conversation. So I didn't want to go into, what should you be doing differently and how come you're doing this and all that. It's like more or less wanting to genuinely empathize with him. And, I was thinking, I don't know what it's like to be a teenage boy growing up in the world today. I only know my experience of many years ago. So trying to sort of understand his world and what's been happening and, the challenge it is, growing up in the world today. Anyhow, so yeah, I'm a bit vague with the response because I can't remember. But I just remember the key thing for me was be in a mood where you're going to be his grandpa, right? Not anybody else, because that's how he knows me, and
Yep.
respect that we get on well together in our relationship, and to want to keep that going. Now in the background, I was actually worried about him because I thought, I've got the whole thing about sort of suicide and that, and should I tell his parents? And I went home and talked about it with my partner, and I just thought I'll let it go for a while. But if it looks like he was going to get more, if things were looking like a bit worse, then I would have gone and had sort of further conversations. But as it is, I think he just worked through it, and maybe just the act of sharing was enough for him, rather than keep it to himself. And so I thought, well, really, being a good grandpa is that, like, the boy has the impression he can come and share things with you, and that's to me, that's the really key thing.
So sometimes it is as simple as that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Somebody just wants to share or get something off their chest.
Don't overcomplicate it, Just because they share it doesn't mean you then have to go into sort of asking all sorts of searching questions, because he hasn't given permission for me to be his coach. And he probably never will. Good luck to him.
Can I touch on permission for a moment, Alan?
Yes, yeah.
Because I see very commonly people giving unsolicited advice,
yeah,
and then wondering why the reception wasn't so good.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've put it to people, well, you didn't have permission.
Yeah.
You're telling that person what to do and where they went wrong. They never asked you for that.
Yeah.
Are you seriously expecting a different result?
Yes. Yeah. And in the world of ontology, we have it's initially sounds a user user unfriendly question, but once we get the hang of it, it's really powerful. So the words are, for the sake of what? For the sake of what am I giving advice to this person? Put in another way, by giving advice, what am I wanting to take care of? And I think when we give unsolicited advice, we're fundamentally taking care of ourselves and not the other person.
Yep.
Yeah. And
There's a bit.
that's why it falls on either deaf or hostile ears. Whereas we can seek permission. We can say, look, I've got a perspective on this. You may not agree with it, but could I share it with you? And please don't feel obliged to sort of take this on board. So not only do you seek permission, but you want to honour the person and say, look, basically it's my opinion, and it may be way off the mark. But I'm if you give me the chance to share it, I'm hoping it might be helpful for you. So that's coming from a very different, if you like, emotional space or mood in seeking to give advice. Yeah.
Yeah, the permission piece is very important to receptiveness, in my experience.
Yeah.
When I'm in groups of people, especially if I'm facilitating something, I'll often ask their permission.
Yeah.
Are you guys, and it's as simple as, are you guys okay if I pull you up if I think you're going off track?
Yeah. Lovely.
Or if are you okay if I cut you short? I'm not trying to be rude, but this is where we're trying to get to. Would that be all right?
Yeah, and to me, that's, we come back to respect. Like these are fellow human beings that we're engaged with. We want to contribute to their world, but we don't always know the best way to do that. And just checking in with them from time to time can make all the difference.
That's an important piece of the communication puzzle as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's a conversation, so two people are involved, two or more anyway.
Yeah, one principle I find really helpful, in relationships and communication is that fundamentally people always do the best they can with what they know based on the history of their learning experiences. So we might, think someone's just behaving disgracefully or crazily or some way, shape or form, but whatever they do, they're always taking care of themselves in the best way that they know. And typically people have fallen into habits that often aren't always very acceptable by other people or productive. And that can position us rather than sort of jump to blame and finger pointing, it could be like, wow, I wonder what's going on with that person. What's had them create the impression that they could behave that way? What's been happening in their life?
I think that's easier to do if you don't make it about yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So if I can stifle my judgment of the other person and be curious instead.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and that's a challenge because sometimes people's behaviour, it's a bit dramatic to say, but it kind of violates our standards of acceptability, and sort of some sense of social consensus. And so we can quickly sort of, basically categorise people as deviants in some way, rather than like, I wonder what's going on. How is it they learned to be that way? How is it they think they could behave that way? And then the next step would be, well, if you want to have a conversation with them, how could you try and create some receptiveness and come at it from a point of view of inquiring, right? Rather than coming in sort of advocating, well, this is how you should behave in this setting, it's not right what you've done. So again, I think what you pointed to, sort of the emotion, the mood of curiosity can be extremely helpful, I think, in communication.
There's a lot to learn, isn't there?
Oh yeah, it's to me it's an ongoing mystery of life. And, one of the views I have is perhaps some of the most exquisite communicators at times are right in front of our eyes, and their mothers, because they develop, of necessity, they develop this very strong bond. I'm not discounting fathers as kids get older, but in those initial, and mothers, are just amazingly receptive to what's going on with their child and their children, and I think have amazing ways of sort of engaging with them that we would call communication. But it's almost like there's this sort of very tight coupling, kind of bonding that's going on between them, where they understand each other. This is even before the child can utter a word. I think it's a phenomenal thing, and I think there's always potential learning there, like that receptiveness that mothers can have. How can we learn that and take it into sort of adult life?
Have you come to any conclusions on that? That's fascinating.
Other than just observe, for me, like as a male, just observing women in communication and their different ways at times of communicating, learning from that, and just really observing mothers with young children, and thinking, okay, I'm not a woman, I'm not a mother, but what can I learn if it's just a little thing that might help me be more receptive, understanding, respectful, of other people.
Yeah, and I'd like to add, it doesn't mean you don't have boundaries.
Oh no,
and you can't set boundaries, because that's an important part of communication also, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's a key part of communication with yourself. Being clear about, where are your boundaries, what's important for you to do to take care of yourself, and that people understand that. So part of the communication is, well, how do you make your stand in life in certain situations, and people know that.
Alan, going back to what you do in business life and the training you provide to people, you must be in the hundreds by now, maybe thousands.
Oh
potentially.
Well into
it'd be
the
thousands, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Look, I mean, I've just had such good fortune to be. When I started my business, I never even imagined I'd work outside of Australia. And then, what's it been? Probably over the last 20 years, I think, because I wrote some books. I've written 4 books, and the internet and people purchasing, and then I got invitations to go and do workshops in other countries. And so now, that's been Asia, South Africa, Europe, UK, and the USA, New Zealand, of course, and the Pacific. Had a wonderful experience. The year before last, working with a group of women leaders from Pacific Island nations, and we did a 6-month coaching course, and it was the most brilliant experience, culturally, and sort of gender, and like the conversations that they were prepared to have was magnificent. So that's one example of just continuing to learn about humans interacting with each other and how it occurs in different ways in different cultures.
So what are these people around the world engaging you to do?
It's mainly in the areas of sort of running courses. So I have a 3-day, I call it like a foundations course. It's a standalone workshop, which is people can do in person, or we offer it online as well. And they'll get lots of practical stuff from that. And it's a foundation for going on and doing the program that you did, the 18-month program, where you can really go deep into the ontological work and how you apply it as a coach and a facilitator and just in your own personal life. And over the years, I've built colleagues in different countries. So Asia, UK, South Africa, and of course also here in Australia, which is really wonderful, and become really, really good sort of friends with people through that as well. So it's just a joy for me to continue to do, because I just find people so fascinating, and what they share about themselves and their cultural settings. People, different skin color, ethnicity, religion, social class. Yeah, just fascinating mix of humanity.
Human beings are endlessly fascinating. Alan, I want to ask you, what do people get out of your 3-day course? What are the aims and the potential for outcome?
Oh well, they can get all three things or a combination. Um, they'll definitely get some deeper personal insight into how they are, you know, basically how they function as a person, and how they can make important changes for themselves if they want to. Um, they get a very solid framework, a starter, almost like a detailed starter kit to coach. So how to engage in coaching, um, not just a set of questions, but more what's an orientation, an orientation of an inquiry. Um, and then as a leader, like like learning how to coach is one way of having conversations. And so a leader can sort of take from the coaching experience how they could build questioning more into the way that they lead, how they could listen differently for people, or listen to people, and generally just be more available and improve the quality of interactions that they're having with people, for mutual benefit and the benefit of the business.
Do you think it would be accurate enough or accurate to describe it as a course where you can learn more about yourself and learn better ways to communicate with yourself and other people?
Oh, definitely, yeah, yeah, yeah. And what's attracted me to this work is its depth, and it is a very different approach to other approaches. And part of how it's different is it's immediately practically relevant. What I love about the work I do, because I think about I'm sharing it with people, what I'm sharing is what people already do, but they're not aware of. And as one person said years ago, she said, this stuff isn't rocket science, but she said it makes the intuitive obvious, which I thought was a really insightful comment. And I thought, yeah, that's what it is. And when we talk about using language, well, we use language, but we don't notice how we use it. We do live in moods, but we've got very little, if any, awareness of them. And the other part is, what's the role of our physiology in how we communicate with ourselves and with others and go about, trying to do things in life. So, and I love it. I'm always curious. I wonder how people will respond to this.
Well, I can attest that I've found it very practical.
Thanks, Hanif.
And based in science. So it's not a marketing spill and it's not hype.
No.
And I think because it's essentially pulls apart what it means to be human, has some science behind how do you understand and make sense of it, and then there's some practical steps in what are the ways in which I could choose to go about implementing some of this to make some positive change.
Yes.
And it wouldn't matter if you did this work today or 100 years ago or probably 100 years in the future, because it's not marketing hype. It'll stand the test of time.
Yeah. And that's, when I wrote the books, so the first one got published in 2003. I remember when I was writing it, I thought, I want someone to be able to read this in 20, 30, 50 years' time, and it's still relevant. So I think I have one date in it. But I thought I don't want to have dates. Don't want to give examples where there's actual dates. I want people to be able to read it as though, wow, this is kind of current. This is speaking to me. And that's, to me, the joy of it is what people go and do with it. It's just fantastic. I'm in regular contact with people, I'm going to say all around the world, but not every country, but people that have done the course, and just, in touch with them about what they're doing, how they're applying their learning. Got one guy from France that did the course a couple of years ago, and he's now specialising working with entrepreneurs and startups, and he organises retreats. And, every now and then he calls up and we have a coaching and a mentoring conversation. It's just brilliant to be in touch with him. People in South Africa that are, moved into the field of how do you bring ontology into leadership to help communities there help themselves to develop, which is fantastic to be part of.
Yeah, it is. Where do people find you?
Well, there's probably the website, I suppose. I mean, if you just Google Ontological Coaching, it'll come up. The website's Ontological Coaching Institute. And, I've tried to make it a really informative website as a learning resource as well as a promotional outlet. So there's about 100 articles, many of them written by graduates from the course.
Great.
There's details about the books, there's videos, there's audio recordings. So, my hope is that people could get some good learning about ontology if all they did was went to the website and picked up stuff from that.
Fantastic. I'll ask Jeremy to put a link in the bottom of the videos so people can just click it and go straight to you. I know we only just brushed on the surface, Alan. If you don't mind, at some point, be great to pick a subject and dive a little deeper.
Absolutely. Well, I think yeah, like, to me, the theme was communication, but ultimately, like, the deeper theme is like being human. How are we being human? Because being human inevitably means interacting with other people, which is, of course, is communication. So communication's about being a human being, and ultimately, how can I be a better version of myself?
What a wonderful way to end. I'm going to ask Jeremy to put that at the beginning. Because that's essentially what it is, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
Yep. Alan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's wonderful to talk to you again.
I really appreciate the opportunity to have the conversation and the share. Yeah. Thank you.